is a dead Nephilim in a Kansas military bunker. Oh, you don't say. I wonder if it's the Kandahar giant, because they hauled that guy out of there, and they like, I think they've kept him on ice or whatever so they can experiment and do all kinds of stuff. But let's check this one out, guys.
A woman named Elle reached out and she said they are keeping things underground in Kansas, and if those things ever got out, we would be completely screwed as a society. Now, Elle says her ex-husband was very stoic, very mean, and very no-nonsense. He was decorated in the military, and they had been married for 4 years when he finally told her this story. And the only reason he told her was because they were stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic for over 8 hours. She gave me a lot of information so that I was able to verify that he is a real person and did the job that she said that he did. But in order to keep both her and his identities private, all I'm going to tell you is that he joined the military at age 18, and 8 of the years that he was in the service, he spent between Iraq and Afghanistan. Now retired and on 100% disability due to a direct IED hit while paratrooping. So years ago, when Elle and her ex were still married, they were on a road trip to visit a friend in another city, and the trip was supposed to take about 8 hours, but they got caught in bumper-to-bumper traffic, and those 8 hours turned into 20. Apparently a really bad accident. The highway was completely stopped, and it was so bad that people were parking their cars on the interstate and getting out and talking to each other, on the hoods of their car, hanging out because nobody could go anywhere. Car is off. She says she was always passenger princess and he had been driving during this road trip. But after they had been stuck for several hours, they had a bottle in the trunk. He decided to get a little bit tipsy. She was like, no problem, I can drive. They're not going anywhere soon anyway. So they're sitting there. He starts drinking, he gets a little loose, and that's when he tells her this story that she could not believe, because in all the years that they had known each other, he had never talked any kind of nonsense to her. But he tells her that when he was stationed in Afghanistan, he was like the big boss of his command. I'm sure there's a proper term. I apologize. I'm not familiar with military terminology, but stationed about 20 miles away from Kandahar. And one night he's sleeping Kandahar and he's awoken by a real life Jason Bourne type figure, as he described it to her. And he does not know this man, but this man instructs him to gather 2 men under his command that he trusts the most. One of the men is going to be escorting him, and the other man is going to act as a watcher to ensure that nobody else at their station knows that these people even left. And Elle's ex tells her that he had heard of these secret men, but he had never believed in them, and he was the highest authority at his post. It meant that there was no commanding officer over him at this post, and he had not approved this Jason Bourne type to enter the post, especially not his personal quarters. But he gathers 2 men, he does what he's told, he instructs soldier number 1 to stay there and keep watch, and soldier number 2 to follow him. That he didn't know what they were getting into, but he knew that something serious was about to go down. They go about 2 miles away, and they are met with 2 other special forces, an Army Ranger and a Navy SEAL, and he found this extremely strange because Navy SEALs are not typically on missions in Afghanistan or Iraq. Elle says she's not aware of this, but this is just what he told her. Anyway, the Army Ranger hands him what is essentially an NDA, but they referred to it as something different. They have him and the soldier that he chose to assist him sign. After they sign the paperwork, they are led to 2 large, special marked cargo, temperature-controlled containers. He recognized because he used to work in logistics as an Army Ranger. He knew that these were used at one point to ship out weaponized viruses. Is expecting something to that effect, I suppose. But they go in and there is a dead giant. Elle's ex was allegedly instructed to remove his personal belongings and take his measurements. Even though he was no longer alive, they also were instructed to ensure that he was securely tied down. Describe this giant to Elle as being over 17 feet long with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. He had red hair, a beard, and was wearing a loincloth that he described to Elle as being similar to what Brendan Fraser wore in Tarzan. Weighed in at over 900 pounds, and he told Elle that he smelled like evil. And Elle remembers saying, evil is not a smell. What does evil smell like? And he said, me trying to explain that to you would be me trying to explain what a painting looks like to someone who was born blind. You would never know the smell unless you smelled it yourself. He told Elle that they also removed a satchel from him that was made of the same material that his loincloth was, which they assumed to be the hide of some kind of animal. Inside the satchel were weapons made from bones and a spear that was made probably from a tree trunk. They then assisted in shipping this cargo container with the dead giant inside to an underground facility in Kansas, where apparently he said they keep a lot of these things. That's when he said, that's not all that's there, but if I told you what was there and if those things ever got out, we would all be effed. Scary Storytime is a series of allegedly true listener-submitted stories. Keep in mind these can come from anyone. None of this story should be taken as absolute fact, but all of these stories are sent in by real people. That said, Elle's name has been changed, but she will be seeing the comments. If you have a story you think nobody would believe, send it in. We'd love to hear it. And I'm putting together a podcast of spooky, scary military stories, so that's why I'm kind of harping on this topic a lot lately.
You guys see that her channel name, Ashley Inc., is on the screen. I will be leaving her link down below in the comment section, in the description. Sorry, in the description. I'm saying this a lot, guys, in every video because people continue to tell me that I haven't left the content creators information in the video, and I definitely have. She obviously is talking about a Nephilim here. Now, if we go to the comment section, a lot of people are talking about the Kandahar giant, and you'll know if you guys are, people that watch every video that I do. I talked about this Kandahar giant in a video maybe 2 months ago. And there was another military operative that worked on a case where they went to this a cave in the mountains, the Kandahar Mountains out in Pakistan. They found a giant. It wasn't 17 feet tall like this one, but I think he said it was 12 feet tall, or maybe it was 9 feet tall, something.
Okay, so you can already tell. I mean, the urban legend has grown at this point. I remember this from 20 years ago, man. And I'm telling you, at that point in time, it was just a whisper, you know? Now, I do believe we did encounter a giant, something out there, and we did engage with said thing. I have the illustration of what the giant looked like after the fact, and what she said about it being tied up still. That's how it was depicted in the artist's painting of it. It was still tied up. Now, this thing was tall. I don't remember exactly how tall, but I remember in the artist description showing like just from the foot to the knee. It just seemed like it went like was all the way up to like your shoulder. That's just crazy.
Something pretty tall, but it also had 6 toes, 6 fingers, red hair, and red beard, and it smelled terrible as well. Honestly, guys, we don't know what these are, but the information that we're given, the closest thing that we can compare it to are what the Nephilim are explained to look like, right? So I'm saying this to say that in that video even, and I think I've done 2 videos addressing this. This is the third now, where we're getting the same information from military members, and the similarities are striking. So much so that I can't say that I can continue to ignore the similarities. Now, to hide it in a bunker in Kansas, that's not something that I can verify nor deny. I know that we have underground bunkers for elites. We have high maximum security prisons that I've heard are underground. Okay, so Florence, Colorado has a partially buried subterranean buried elements. The most prominent example is ADX Florence in Colorado, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, which houses inmates 7.5-foot poured concrete cells with minimal above ground exposure, often described as a concrete tomb. Okay, so we've got some prisons that are partially underground, and I think that, guys, we can't ignore the fact that these stories keep popping up. And I've heard multiple people say that in the last days the Nephilim will be what roams the earth and terrorizes everyone, that the people that are left over, that it will be the Nephilim roaming around that destroys everybody. So while the Bible doesn't explicitly say that Nephilim will return in the end days, we do see some scripture that kind of hints at it. And obviously we won't know any of this until the end days comes, but there are some key perspectives right here that I want to share with you on the end times and the Nephilim. And one we see is Matthew 24:37, that says, as in the days of Noah. And this passage is the primary basis of the belief that the Nephilim or similar hybrid beings will return. It suggests a repeat of the pre-flood conditions, which included the mingling of the sons of God, often interpreted as the fallen angels, with humans. And I kind of lean towards that being where we can have some validation of this being a theory. The interpretation of Daniel 2:43. Some scholars interpret Daniel 2:43, which speaks of a kingdom that will mingle with the seed of men, but not adhere to one another, as a reference to another attempt to corrupt human genetics with supernatural entities. I kind of feel like we're seeing that sort of stuff happening right now when it comes down to transhumanism. Arguments against a literal return, though, because there's both sides of this. Many commentators argue that the Nephilim were destroyed in the flood, And the Bible does not teach a literal return of a hybrid race. They believe this interpretation misinterprets the spiritual nature of the end times, which focuses on spiritual wickedness in high places rather than physical giants. And then afterward, in Genesis 6:4, while the Nephilim existed after the flood, Numbers 13:33, this does not explicitly guarantee their return in the end times. So really, guys, ultimately, we won't know until whatever's going to happen happens. But I do think it's mighty strange that there's so much talk about the Nephilim and these giants popping up all over the place right now, especially with military personnel. Now, it could all be a distraction, just like the files, the UFO files, everything. It could just be another distraction, another layer in this cake of distractions being given to us. But I'm more inclined to believe that spiritual things do happen. There is spiritual wickedness going on right now. And who's to say what's going on behind the scenes? So that's going to do it for this one. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. As I said, Ashley's video is linked down below in the description in case you guys want to go follow her, check out more of her content. But that's going to do it for this one. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, God bless.
You know, man, I'm telling you, I don't doubt it that we have some dead giants stored in a freezer somewhere. I believe that they've been around for a long, long time. I mean, the Bible itself says that they were there before the flood and also after. Now, I can't remember where it was, and I'm not saying that this is something that's going to happen. It's not in the Bible. Just like what Marcus was saying, it's hinted at about the Nephilim, but it's not specifically mentioned. But it does say that as in the days of Noah, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. So, I mean, just as like it was right before the flood, it's going to be that way again. And one of the things I heard recently, it was this guy, he had a dream or vision or whatever, and it was terrifying, man. But he said it was of these people, and it was like a destroyed cityscape or whatever. And he said he was like seeing through the eyes of somebody like during the tribulation, and he was talking about how they were hiding in the basement or whatever of some building, trying to be absolute quiet because of the Nephilim that was coming through the town looking for food, basically. And I mean, you take that how you want, man. I mean, I'm not saying that that's exactly what's going to happen, okay? But it is supposed to be the worst time in all of mankind's history. It's never going to ever get that bad again. I mean, that's how bad. So, regardless of, the Nephilim start actually roaming around again, or if it's just one guy with total control, I don't know, man. I mean, that's what the Bible says. But I know a lot of stuff is going to happen during that time frame, and I know above all else, you don't want to be there. And you don't have to be. All right? So just keep that in mind. You don't have to be there for that. You can always just come to Jesus, man. It's that simple, man. Just come to Jesus. I wish it was that simple. It is, but most people can't see it. Most people don't want to see it. They're very comfortable with where they're at. Switching it up.